All right. Well, so the last time we did this, I was April and I were there at y'all's house in Canada,
Yes.
but this time we are in our own home and in Alabama, and you are in Canada, and so we're going to do this international broadcast.
Yeah, I'm really excited about following it up. I was surprised at how awesome the last one was.
Yeah, I was too. I didn't think anybody would listen to us, and there were about 100 people on there listening to us last time, so that was good.
Yeah, and people wanted to participate, which was great.
So, for anybody that's just now coming on or doesn't know me, my name is Scott. I am one of the co-creators of naughtygym.com, and we provide online coaching, workout programs, and a kind of a fitness community for people in the lifestyle or the sex positive community. So that's anybody from consensual non-monogamous to polyamorous, LGBTQ, whatever it is that falls outside the scope of traditional church views of sex and relationships, I suppose. And you are?
I am Liam, and with my wife Kate, we created the Monogamish Marriage blog 6 years ago. For the last 6 months, we've been doing the Monogamish Marriage podcast, and yeah, we're excited to be a part of this.
Well, today we're going to talk about some of the things that we've seen that are myths or maybe falsities with people's views on what consensual non-monogamy is all about. And I think you're going to start with maybe some of the things that you've seen or your own misconceptions before starting, and I'll talk about some of mine, and then we can let people chime in if they want to have questions or share their own misconceptions.
Yeah, I'm really interested to hear what people have to say. We are also working on, Kate and I, a course, an introduction to non monogamy. And a big part of it is to say to people who maybe have a partner who is less enthusiastic than they are, hey, it's not what you think. And so that got us thinking about what are the misconceptions that hold people back? So we did a tweet earlier this week, and it was really fascinating. Lots of people chimed in with what their concerns were or what concerns they've seen among their friends. And so it got me thinking back to my own experience. And mine is a little bit hard to put into words, but I think if you had asked me 2 years before we got into it, I would have started from a place of suspicion. Like, yeah, it sounds great. Free sex, awesome. But probably the reality is pretty grim. Some sad swinger stereotypes just sitting around trying to manufacture enthusiasm for something that they've drained all the joy out of, which is sex. Without its mystery and without its scarcity, is probably just a shadow of the exciting thing it could be. So I don't know if that's clear to people. That's kind of how I felt.
Well, so the first time I know we've talked about your guys' journey in the lifestyle, but the first time that you ever went, you and Kate, to some sort of big group thing,
Yes.
whether, and I don't know what it was, or if it was I think it was a resort, maybe, if I remember, but a resort or a takeover, or where you have to walk in to a large number of other people who are consensual non-monogamous swingers, lifestylers. What did you expect to see versus what you saw?
Well, the first place was a club, actually. It was a club called Wicked that was in Toronto. And for a long time, it was the only club, or the most prominent anyway. And it no longer exists. But it kind of conformed to what I expected. It was 70% sad people. And so I'm not talking about looks, I'm not talking about socioeconomic status, nothing but just that thing that I feel sometimes in casinos, which is there's some people having fun here, and there's a lot of sad people who seem to have an intimate relationship with a slot machine or something like that. So there was enough there to keep us interested, but later when we went to hedonism for the first time, and now we were committed to the path, and we were electrified. It was great, super positive, completely dispelled my worst fears of what it would be like.
Yeah, I think my view of what a party in this world looked like was either one of two things. It either looked like the scene from the movie that, I don't know, it's probably 20 years old now, Eyes Wide Shut, where you walk in and it's incredibly elaborate,
Right.
super beautiful people and everybody wearing a mask.
Right.
Or it was the exact opposite. It was something more like a mobile home park in the countryside of Alabama. Everybody drove their truck in. Half of them rode in the bed of the pickup truck,
Right.
and some of them were wearing coveralls or something. But fortunately, it turns out to be much more in the middle, and neither of those two conceptions were very accurate.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised, and I have been continuously astonished by the quality of people that we meet. Um, that was a big revelation. But I'm so interested to hear what others have to say they were dealing with, because we had all kinds of things. People with deep moral concerns about what it would be like, public health concerns about what this world would be about, and just all those things. So it's really interesting to hear, because everyone's coming from a different place, and we're all just picking up snippets of rumors and representations on TV shows that don't really give us a full picture. So our imaginations tend to work with the little tidbits we get and create something, depending on where we're coming from, either overly optimistic or overly pessimistic.
Yeah, so for anybody that's listening and you have a question or would like to make a comment, you just go, there's a little button where you can essentially raise your virtual hand or request to speak. And if we hit the button correctly, we can put you on here and you can talk or ask a question. Yeah, I think my biggest misconception was that I expected this to be more seedy,
Right.
where it was a grimy environment and things were just kind of dirty and under the table. And it really has been much. Well, first of all, most of the time when you go into a big party or a resort or a club, it looks like any other party or resort or club. You've got people that are dressed in date night attire, and everybody's nice and outgoing, and they look like normal people.
Right.
Some are attractive, some aren't, some are in the middle, some are wealthy, some aren't, and it's really a microcosm of the population. But I know that for sure I expected to see something different than what I was accustomed to in the people there, and it really wasn't that. It's just normal, everyday people, and you can't identify uh, who is a lifestyle person and who isn't.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's more complex for you and I, and probably a few people at least listening, and that is that we had very religious upbringings and church backgrounds. So when I think of what my conception was, thinking it can't be this fun, it must be people, with kind of a desperate need or hunger that they're trying to fulfill. Well, that is a real Christian way of looking at things. Like, you have a God-sized hole in your heart, and if your life isn't right, you are going to continually try to fill it with the wrong things. Like, that's exactly where that came from. And I know for a lot of people, that is a big hurdle. And sometimes long after they've even stopped believing those messages that they received growing up, like sex is, just basically sex is a neutron bomb that like kills populations and leaves wreckage in its path, and you've got to be very careful. It's dangerous and it's wrong, and God does not like it very much, except in very limited circumstances. So I think, and everyone's religious experience is also different. So whatever their background happens to be, they can have different tastes. But there's a lot of, it's no surprise to hear lots of negativity towards sex, and that colors people's expectations of what's actually going on in this world.
Yeah, that brings up something that was tremendously shocking to April and myself both. Um, Growing up very conservatively religiously in the South, and this was a evangelical fundamentalist Christian upbringing. I just assumed that if somebody was going to be in the lifestyle, that they had at some point, in order to relieve themselves of the guilt of doing this kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
had dropped their religion altogether, or at the very least had their religious views migrate to something bordering on non-religious. Because, like you say, growing up in the type of religion that we did, what we do now, consensually, it would not be allowed, regardless of the fact that it's consensual. You can't have sex outside of marriage. You certainly can't have sex with somebody that isn't your spouse. And so it turns out, though, that many people maintain their religious beliefs and still are in the lifestyle. And and really somewhat to this day, I'm still surprised about that. I'm not sure exactly how people rationalize that. I'm glad that they can still keep religion if it's a benefit to them. But that has definitely been a big shock to me.
Yeah, it's funny because, I can put myself back in those shoes, and I think, how would I explain to myself, or these people that you and I have both met who have maintained their religious devotion and still are non-monogamous? And I had the idea that, in the Ten Commandments, there's "thou shalt not steal," but stealing is like having someone else's possessions without permission. But if you have permission, it's not theft anymore, it's a gift. And I thought, thou shalt not commit adultery presumes that it's something that the other party doesn't want. But if you suddenly add consent to it and mutuality, I don't think it applies anymore. I think now that may be me twisting and turning, trying to justify what I just really want to do, regardless. But I think it does make a big difference. Like it's undeniable that the overall assumption is that, adultery is just the worst thing that can happen to another person because it presumes that they don't want it. But people like ourselves, so I know you really well, Scott, like, we're thrilled when our partners have sex with someone else. It's not like, well, we can put up with it if that's what they really want. We're thrilled. So suddenly that whole harm to another dimension is gone, and it's a completely different thing at that point. But again, I don't know if I would actually convince anyone who was dead set against it from a religious perspective.
Yeah, I'd love to. If anybody out there is listening that is still considers themselves Christian or is very religious and has their own reasons to be able to justify that or rationalize it, I'd love for you to chime in and kind of give us your viewpoint on it. And I think, Liam, what you've laid out is probably about the best argument that you could make. Although I fall back to my hyper conservative upbringing and hear that, and I know that if I was still the guy I used to be
Yep.
and still a Christian, I would go, yeah, nice try, but that's reaching a bit. Because the Bible doesn't really give that latitude in the way that I understand it. At least from that conservative, every word in the Bible is the inspired word of God, and it's all to be taken as an instruction book for your life. It does not give you permission ever to have sex with somebody outside of your marriage, and it doesn't matter whether somebody gives you permission to do that or not. It also doesn't give you permission to have sex prior to your marriage with somebody you're not married to, regardless of whether they give you permission or not. So while I get that is probably a good rationalization, it would never have held water in my church. I'll say
right.
that.
Well, I'm going to resist the temptation to have a debate with retroactive Scott, because I know you no longer feel that way. But I want to talk a little bit about some of the other things that came up with people. And one of the biggest ones was a kind of like a shame about people's bodies. And I bring this up because our wives did a podcast that was released just this week about body image for women and the unique struggles that they face in our society. So even two beautiful women, anyone who knows Kate and April knows they're very beautiful women, and they're just racked by self-doubt. So, it's really concerning to see. But then you look more broadly, and if someone says, I'm not interested in being in the lifestyle because I feel terrible about my body. The last thing I want to do is expose it to other people, and just imagine the contempt they'll feel for me, pity, just all the worst things we can generate in our overactive, self-hating imaginations. But it's a big factor for people just saying, I do not want to take my clothes off in front of other people. Thank you very much. I do it in the dark with my own spouse, and that's about all I have in me.
Yeah, and of course, you at least to some degree have to move past that in order to, or at least if you're going to be in some of these clothing optional situations in the lifestyle, you're going to have to at least start to scale the mountain of that hurdle.
Right.
You may not ever get all the way across it, but um, we one of the beautiful things about the lifestyle is that people are so complimentary. I mean,
yes,
it is one of the most positive. Um, no matter what you look like or what you think you look like, if you put off a smile and good energy, you're going to start to feel better about yourself because you're going to get complimented by the people around you. They're going to come up, they're going to interact with you in a positive way. They're going to compliment you on the way that you look. And you don't get that as often in the vanilla world, as we call it.
right. Well, we were in Hedonism. So people who don't know, Hedonism 2 is the name of the resort in Jamaica, in Negril. It's great, very sex positive. It's has enforced nudity. If you're on the nude side of the resort, you're not allowed to say, you know what, I'm just going to leave my trunks on for a few minutes here. You will be approached by staff and told to take them off. So I remember we were at Hedonism a couple of years ago, and I looked at a woman, and she was what our society would say is overweight. And I would say she was about in her 50s. And so I thought, well, good for her. Look, she's out here showing off her body, and it's not perfect, but good for her. Then I ran into a friend of ours, a very good friend, and he said, did you see Jane? I'm just going to call her Jane. I'm not divulging anything. That's not her real name. So did you see Jane? Jane is the hottest woman I think I've ever seen. So here I'm thinking, oh, good for Jane. She's not perfect, but she's showing what she's got. She turned out to be the absolute ideal of another friend of mine. So I think that's what people start to understand too, that, oh, this narrow conception of what a beautiful body looks like that is holding people back from being free and being naked in the presence of others could actually be the very thing someone else is looking for.
Yeah. And you don't discover that unless you're
No,
in
you
an
don't.
environment like this. You don't run into it. And, that keeps, and all of these things kind of come back to the fact that, in my opinion, and this could be a controversial statement, but it's just better people in the lifestyle.
So why do you think that is?
Well, I think that in order to be successful, in order to be able to navigate having sex with other people and it be a positive to your current relationship instead of a negative, you have to have an incredibly strong emotional IQ. You can't. You got to have two things. You have strong emotional IQ, and you've got to have a tremendous foundation with your relationship with your partner. Your communication has to be fantastic, but those kinds of things don't happen as easily with people who aren't just excellent people in general. Right? You don't run into bad people who are going to be successful, letting their spouse have sex with other people or living this kind of life that we've lived. And so what has happened is the more we've been in this world, in this lifestyle community, the level, and that sounds so horrible, but the level of person that we meet is way above average. At least that's what it feels like to us.
Yeah, I see we have a request to speak here, and I'm anxious to get some other voices in here. Have you figured out how to bring them in, Scott?
Yeah, I think I did. Swinger Central podcast, Callie Cody. That's a long Twitter handle there, but you guys are up, I think. Can you hear us? You may be muted, by the way.
Okay.
Swinger Central.
I'm here.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, so
what's going on?
So yeah, you guys were talking about people being amazing people in this lifestyle. I 100% agree. I think because of the way that nobody's judgmental, nobody has to worry about what other people think because everybody is doing the same exact thing. I mean, it's all amazing in our eyes too. We were at a party last night, and one of our buddies is his 50th birthday, and he requested that everybody dressed up as Playboy bunnies, and we literally had all the girls dress up at Playboy bunnies. I dressed up as like a Chippendale dancer, and literally there's every shape, every size. Everybody loves everybody. Everybody's just like good friends. I mean, I couldn't ask for a better scenario, better group of friends. So, I mean, I know what you guys are talking about.
Do you think it has something to do with the do clothes cause a lot of problems? That's a goofy way maybe of asking that question, but
well, I mean, for me, I'm the type of person that when I walk in the door, my clothes come off. Just because I like to be free. I've always been an exhibitionist, always loved to be free. And then a lot of people, I mean, in our group, we have some heavier set, some thinner, like it's 50-50. And it doesn't matter.
It looks like the normal population.
Yeah, it's literally, it doesn't matter what they look like. Everybody just does what they want and are happy doing it because they're not being judged by anybody. And like you were talking about the Bible stuff, thou shalt not judge. I mean, that's a pretty good representation of that.
Yeah, that's true. We've got, let's see, it's Mrs. Burns. I think you're muted, but if you have a question, unmute and fire away.
Well, I didn't really have a question. It's more I don't think until my partner and I started in any kind of lifestyle community stuff over the past 3 years, until we started this, I don't think I ever felt like as sexy as I do now.
Yeah.
The community is, in your, I don't want to say in your real life because this is real life, but in your outside of your lifestyle life. Like, I feel like people feel like they can just say whatever they want about your body. I have lots of people who make comments about, oh, my sister is one, you should, try and lose 20 pounds, or, talking about your health, or like it's any of their business.
Why do you think that is, that in the lifestyle people tend to compliment you and are much less likely to compliment you on your looks if they're not in lifestyle?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think everyone who's, again, going back to everyone being really nice, everyone is really nice. But I also think people are certainly more sex positive. And to be honest with you, the more sex you have, the happier you are. And I feel like we're a lot happier than most people in the world. Like, it just seems like the more sex you're having, the happier you are.
And then the happier you are, the nicer you are to other people. Is that the point?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can reinforce that because I've met Mrs. Burns and her husband, Mr. Burns, before in Dallas, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And she is a sexy lady, and I interact with her online. Very smart, just a wonderful person. So I'm just throwing in, I guess that's a character reference here.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
My wife, she's a very beautiful woman, but she had also some struggles with her body that she just couldn't get past, and this lifestyle pretty much helped her gain some more confidence.
Yeah, it does. It's hard not to feel encouraged or emboldened when you put yourself in that vulnerable position of being completely naked, or at least close to it, in front of strangers. and have them compliment you on the way that you look. It's just, that's not going to end all your body image issues, but it can't hurt, I wouldn't think.
Exactly.
Ginger Snap, if you'll unmute, you're on.
Hey, so I just wanted to chime in on that thing about the being complimentary to people. I think for those of us that are living in this world and this lifestyle, we are breaking societal norms. And so I think because we are doing that, it opens up our field of vision to people in all body types, all personality types. And so we are breaking what society says what a perfect body looks like, what a perfect human looks like, all of those things. So I think that those two things go hand in hand with each other.
Yeah. Do you think that, I will say that I think this, it's been our experience, but it is much easier to get to the core of a person when you don't have clothes on, because you strip away all the superficial stuff right off the bat. You're standing there staring at each other, you're topless, you have no clothes on, and the only thing left is to get to know them. And so conversations very quickly will turn much more intimate or deep. And you can have a 15-minute conversation with somebody in a pool and you don't have clothes on. You don't discuss the fact that you don't have clothes on, but it sure seems to act as a catalyst for a deeper conversation. Or am I overreading that?
No, I think you're right. I call it intentional vulnerability. When you're stripping away all of that exterior, and like you said, I come from a previous religious life. I was a pastor and a pastor's wife. And so I understand that other side too. And for me, it's when you're literally stripping off the exterior, what's left? Okay, our fantastic brains are what's left.
Right.
And, then we can get to the meat of the matter of why we all enjoy this lifestyle and then enjoy it.
Well,
Yeah.
so that brings up a question, and you can tell me if this is being too nosy, but your husband was a pastor and you were a pastor's wife. You said were, you no longer are. Did it have anything to do with the lifestyle?
No, it didn't. So, I no longer participate in that. For me, I can tell you what it came down to was the level of judgment of people that I experienced inside the building compared to the level of people that I experienced in this world. I found people in this world to be so much more honest, more integrity, people that had literally more joy ebbing and flowing out of them than I did with the judgment and the hierarchy of the people in that building.
Scott?
Yes.
Scott, while we have Ginger here, I'd like to ask what your misconception or myth, if you had any, if you even gave it a thought before, that was dispelled once you went down the non-monogamous path. Was there something that you believed to be true that you later learned out or later found out was not?
Were you asking Scott that question or
No,
me?
sorry. I was asking you, Ginger.
Okay, say that again then for me. I thought you were asking
that. Yes. So the topic today is myths about consensual non-monogamy. So I was just wondering if there were any things that you believe to be true about non-monogamy that you found out were false once you got in. Anything that would have held you back or that you had to get over.
Somebody earlier made reference to the lies and the 10 Commandments and those things. And that really resonated with me. I think a lot of this ties to a lot of historical purity culture things.
Yes.
And the more I learned about purity culture is when those myths were abolished for me. And when I realized the level of burden that were put on women in sorry, somebody was trying to call me, in the church culture, that's when literally those myths and stereotypes started to break for me.
Right.
Yeah. Were you guys, and again, I'm asking nosy questions, but were you guys participating in the lifestyle before you left the church or before you were no longer clergy?
Yes.
Oh, and you were hiding it.
Yes. I literally led 2 lives.
Yeah. How bad was that,
You know,
having to live that double life?
for me, it was there was so much more freedom in this world than the boxed world. And once I started to realize how many other religious people that I was running into and other folks that I knew, like, hey, I'd go to a pastor's conference and then I'd go up to an event like hedonism and be like, hi, I know you. When you're locking eyes with somebody from across the room and you happen to be both in both cultures. So that's when I discovered there was so much more freedom. And I'm like, I am not going to attach shame or guilt to what it is that I'm doing, because that's what that community wants me to do. And that's what society wants me to do. When in reality, for me, my faith and my religion, it is vertical, not horizontal. And when I got to that mindset in my head, I was like, I don't have to worry about what, um, John or Paul over here are going to throw at me as far as guilt and shame. I'm going to do me. And when I did that, holy, I'm so much happier as a person.
Yeah, isn't it interesting that as soon as the shackles of religious sexual viewpoints are dropped, that your sex life becomes better, much less riddled with guilt, and a far bigger positive in your life than it ever was when you felt shackled to centuries or millennial old beliefs about sex.
Yeah. And my ability to communicate with people rose on exponential levels when you enter this world. And like somebody said, meeting higher quality people, I have felt that I have met people of much more integrity in this lifestyle than I did anybody else that was in that building.
That's amazing. I want to ask people too to think about another objection that came up that we heard about, and that is the one that the fear that their partner is either already shopping for someone new. So that's why they're suggesting, hey, we should open our relationship because they really want to test drive some new models. Or just that they will discover someone who has what they don't have, and then all that they have built together as a couple will be shattered because they couldn't just leave it alone. They had to go try something new. And so that fear of, I guess, the lack of control their partner might show in this kind of environment, or the desire for something novel, will completely ruin their lives. So I wonder for how many people that was the case.
Yeah, I would imagine that to some extent that plays a role in everybody's, especially in your rule set. We all, I guess, most of us have things in the lifestyle we're comfortable with, things we're not. That's usually an evolving an evolving set of rules where you typically start out with a much bigger list when you're new, and maybe that list expands a bit the longer you're in it. But I think my entire list, and I haven't thought, I'm talking off the cuff here, but I think my entire list of things I'm not comfortable with are built off of my fears of what might happen if I dropped those rules from my list.
Right. So can you spell that out for us, Scott? Like, specifically, what would be that thing you would be afraid of happening?
Well, like you said, is it possible that in the right situation, April could find something so captivating in another person that at some point started to tempt her to leave me for that person? And so one of our big rules is neither one of us are interested in separate play. We're always together. And I think that's probably what is the big driver in that rule, is that we feel like we're safer when we're together, when we can keep an eye on each other.
Right.
I make sure she's not doing something I don't like, and she can make sure I'm not doing something. And I don't want to speak for her. She may view that a little bit differently, but it's more comfortable for us right now to not play separately. And I think that's the real reason. I want to be able to monitor what's going on. And that's probably rooted in some fear.
Yeah, that's interesting, because Kate and I are moving in a different direction, which is being more open to separate play and even separate dating opportunities. And it's exciting for us because, we realize that we move at different speeds, feel different levels of attraction to different people. But it's been really interesting because we've been able to do this feeling even more connected as a couple. So it's not like, oh, there you go. They opened the door to non-monogamy and now they're kind of drifting apart. And the opposite feels really true. We feel more connected, more invested in each other. And I think that's what's leading to this. And by the way, this isn't me saying, hey, so Scott, you and April should feel the same way that we do. We really get that everyone's on a different path and that everyone should follow what works best for them. And yourself, and you and April know your relationship as a couple better. So I don't want anyone to take this as me at all, even remotely preaching. I'm just sharing, here's what our journey looks like. But a lot of it is, I think, on my side, just realizing, oh, we've got this very complex bond. So yes, there are some things I can explore on my own. So I'm looking at going on a date with a woman on my own sometime in the next month. So that's something that we've discussed. But at the root of it is this conviction that our relationship is so multidimensional and complex and satisfying. I can't imagine meeting someone that would make me go, oh, well, goodbye, Kate. I've found something better. So, of course, that doesn't mean it couldn't happen, but that could happen to anyone walking down the street and they start up a conversation, and what do you know? They're sideswiped by an intense attraction. But for me, that has been a journey because we certainly weren't that way at the very beginning. It's, you talked about an evolving set of rules or guidelines that couples put in place, and, and how they change over time. And ours have definitely changed, but the root of it is actually feeling more connected has allowed us to feel more or be open to more autonomy in our explorations.
Yeah. 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 And I heard somebody talking on the podcast not too long ago about it's always a danger to talk about how we have evolved in the lifestyle, because you don't want to give the impression, especially to somebody who's considering trying non-monogamy, that in order to do it correctly, you start timidly and eventually progress to very advanced things. It's not necessarily that way. You may start out as only comfortable with having soft swap with just a female, or some kind of rule like that, and that may be as far as you ever go, and you are just as advanced or correct as somebody who has basically relationship anarchy and is open to anything.
Right.
There's no continuum of progression. There's only just where your line is comfortable with at the moment, and that line is perfectly positioned as long as it's what's making you happy.
Yeah, I can see an individual or a couple who are on this call, who I won't call out, but who have a very strict rule, no penetrative sex. But they have an amazing lifestyle experience. But they've been able to keep that rule in place because for them, it's a rule that really works. And it's obvious when you meet them that this is a couple who are flourishing not just within the world of non-monogamy, but as a pair, as a couple who have joined their lives together. So I want to reinforce what you just said, Scott. It's so important that there's no PhD level, master's level, bachelor's, and whatever would be below that. Just everyone doing their own thing, finding their own level is just a joy to see. And I love that people have that freedom.
Yeah, and I know the couple you're talking about as well. And yes,
I know you do.
They're two of our favorite people in the world.
Yeah,
hi, guys. We do have somebody else, Just Keep Swinging podcast. If you'll unmute, you're up.
Well, I just wanted to jump in because that theme has been reoccurring this week with some of the other discussions that I am part of. And, because one of the big myths or fears is the jealousy factor, in the lifestyle.
Yes.
And what it often boils down to is, jealousy is a broad spectrum topic, but is security. The word security keeps popping up in my head. And it's really a test of your the security of your marriage, I think.
Yeah, what do you mean? So I think I know what you mean, but the more secure you are with each other,
Right.
then the more freedom you feel to explore
Right.
non-monogamy.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how a relationship, and I have heard that there are people out there like this, but I don't know how a relationship starts in the lifestyle when it's on shaky footing to begin with, and then has their relationship improve. Again, I've heard people say that has happened. They know people that's happened to, but I would imagine for every 10 people that were to try that had a shaky relationship and tried consensual non-monogamy, that at least 9 of them were going to get ripped apart by it, and maybe 1 has improvement from it.
Maybe.
Yeah, the foundation that you have with your partner is the launch pad that's going to make this lifestyle successful. If it's not a solid launch pad, it's just not going to go anywhere. All right, we've got one other person here, Consensual Tim. I think you're up if I hit the button correctly. You'll unmute. There you go.
Yeah. So I'm a sex therapist, also a poly consensual non-monogamy aware therapist. I will tell you that when I have spoken with clients about opening up their marriage, things like that, I would say that for the most part, if they are on a shaky footing, I would never talk to them about opening up the marriage. Polyamory and swinging and any of that stuff can definitely lead to some problems if you're not on stable footing. So I just wanted to kind of agree with that. And that's really all I wanted to kind of say. So I do apologize. I just wanted to kind of put that in.
Oh, no, that's great. I have a question. Do you get that a lot in your practice where people, do you get more of the, hey, we would like to try swinging. Do you have advice? Or do you get more, hey, we tried swinging and it's not going well. We need some advice.
You know, honestly, it's a pretty solid mixture, to be real honest with you. Generally, when I'm doing couples counseling, it is something that I have heard, hey, we tried this, and it did some really nasty things to us. And then we go into the sessions talking about, okay, so how was your relationship before you tried this? And they'd say, you know, it was kind of not the best. I was like, well, then that, until you're able to have a solid foundation for your relationship, it makes absolutely no sense to open it up.
Yeah. Have you found that for the people, well, as this is probably not a great question, but most of the people that I know, and I think Don would say the same, that are in this lifestyle, I guess the reason that we know them is because we've run into them so many times. And that means they've been in it a while, or at least long enough for us to see them at multiple events, and have therefore been successful with it and would view it as a big positive, a big plus for their relationship. Do you get a lot of that, or as a counselor, you just basically see all the worst cases all the time?
Oh, no. And I get some great ones, man. Like, and I'm a big believer in consensual non-monogamy. I personally am a conscious monogamist because that's a conscious choice that me and my wife have made. But I think there's a huge disadvantage to expecting monogamy as the default setting. I think that monogamy, there's so many people that monogamy does not work real well for. So, I mean, I get a lot of positive stuff with when it comes to the lifestyle. In fact, I do a podcast myself called All Love is Love here in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And it's primarily about, you know, consensual non-monogamy and different aspects of different relationship styles. And I think all relationship styles are valid and healthy and perfect as long as when you get into those type of relationship styles, you know what you're going into and you have an understanding that it's not going to fix a broken relationship.
Yeah, I so appreciate what you said about being a conscious monogamist. The idea that, because we've determined in terms of our podcast and blog and training and other activities that our mission is that not everyone should be non-monogamous, but that everyone should consider it. And to consider it, you have to have accurate information. So it's great that you have determined what's great, what works perfectly in your relationship, but that openness to other styles and solutions for different personality types and different contexts is really inspiring to hear.
Well, it helps that both me and my wife at one point did practice polyamory. I'll tell you straight up, like my level of being able to communicate when I was a solo polyamorous, that's where I learned to communicate. I didn't learn to communicate from monogamy. I learned it from poly. And my wife's kind of the same way. Like when she was practicing polyamory, that's when she learned how to communicate well. And so what happened was is that when we got together, we decided, hey, you know what? Right now, we just want it to be us. And if that ever changes, we'll communicate that, because communication is the key.
Right.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, we appreciate you jumping on with us.
I appreciate you guys letting me. I was listening to it, and I was like, man, I just want to say something. How do I do that? This is the first time I've done this on Twitter, so thanks, man.
Well, it's our second time, so we're not that far ahead of you.
I just want to throw in a positive check mark for what Tim said. I'm also a social worker and therapist, and he's on point, and I have very similar experiences in my practice as him. So thank you for jumping in.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic that there seems to be a lot of maybe this is another misconception that I had about the lifestyle. I wouldn't have thought there were any, or at least very few therapists that were not that haven't dealt with the situation of people being in consensually non-monogamous relationships, but that they were affirmative for it. That if it worked, we're okay, and it, will help you navigate that process. But now that I've been in this lifestyle world for a while, it's everywhere. On Twitter, it's covered up with sex therapists and coaches that are willing to help people navigate a non-traditional relationship.
Well, I wanted to kind of jump back on that one because, it is not as rare as people think. There's there's quite a few therapists and things that are actually part of that lifestyle. There's quite a few doctors, lawyers, and everything else as far as professionals that are part of the lifestyle. But unfortunately, a lot of times people who are consensual non-monogamous, they end up finding these therapists that are extremely judgmental and don't want to do it. So it's pretty important to be able to know resources that you can find for poly-aware and kink-aware therapists. Also, one last thing, and I'll leave you guys alone, but there's also a really big struggle with finding sex work affirmative therapists too. There's because of the sexual stigma and because of people having this thing about women not being sexually empowered, they put so much stigma on sex workers, and so a lot of sex workers are not able to find good therapy, good health providers, things like that too.
Yeah, that's true. I can imagine that'd be difficult. Thank God for Zoom now, because you can get a therapist in California when you live in North Carolina.
Yeah.
We've got Mistress K. If you'll unmute, you're up.
Hi. I just wanted to piggyback onto what Consensual Tim was talking about, finding therapists and finding resources. And if anybody is wanting to know where they can find kink and poly-friendly therapists or professionals for anything that they need, the National Coalition for Sexual Freedom keeps a running list. And if you go to their website, it's Kink Aware Professionals. I think that's what but it's in their resources page. So I just wanted to put that out there for anybody who might be looking for information and want to find a therapist, to make sure that they find someone who is aware and supportive and of the lifestyle, that is a resource for them.
What was that called again?
It's the National Coalition for Sexual Freedom.
Oh, okay.
And I think the acronym for it's CAP, KAPP, and I think that's Kink Aware Poly Professionals. I think that's what the acronym stands for. But if you go to the National Coalition for Sexual Freedom, it's got a lot of really interesting information on that website.
Okay. Well, yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to look that up. I don't think I follow them, but I'll check that out.
I could give you the website. It's what she just said, KAPprofessionals.org.
KAPprofessionals.org.
Thank you.
Yes. You're welcome.
Yeah, something somebody was saying just a minute ago about how, I think it was Consensual Tim, they're doctors, lawyers that are in this lifestyle. That was another myth or misconception that I had coming in, was that it would be mostly, it goes back to that kind of seedy view that I had of swinging. But in reality, most of the people that we meet are professional people. They're business owners. They're doctors, lawyers, teachers, and professional people. One reason for that, I think, is because it usually requires a little bit of money to live this lifestyle. You've got to have some discretionary income to be able to travel around and go to parties and resorts and things. But I think it also takes that sort of alpha type personality sometimes, that person that's willing to take risks and cut against the grain somewhat. And it's just an incredible group of people to associate with.
Yeah, and I would add to that too, like we're sometimes desperately aware of the need to validate what we do. And so nothing says validation in our society like doctors and lawyers. But, and I know you feel this as well, Scott. We've just met so many people, farmers and factory workers and stay-at-home moms or bus drivers, or just like, not that they're any better either, but just the whole breadth of humanity. And the thing that occurs to me often is that we used to get that in church. Church was the one place where the richest person in town and the poorest person in town could actually be in the same room listening to the same messages together. And we don't get that a lot in our society anymore, but we do in consensual non-monogamy. See, just people united by a shared sense of freedom and a desire to do something creative with their sexual lives. And it's really exciting to see. And I would want people to know that too, because people, we're aware of people holding back because they think, oh, it's only going to be one kind of person, but there's a lot of different views of what one kind of person might be. And I'd hate for someone to think that, oh, I don't belong in that group, because it's clear to us, and I know to you as well, that everyone belongs.
Yeah, it strips away a lot of the pretense when you're standing there with no clothes on in front of somebody.
Yeah.
In church, a lot of times you can somewhat tell where somebody's station is in life. If somebody's got $1,000 suit on and another guy's in a raggedy outfit, and this lifestyle can somehow, in some ways, take the place of that. What church, like you said, what church was supposed to be, where it's this judgment-free community where we're all equal and, we're all underneath this umbrella of churchiness. Well, now maybe we're under this umbrella of, we choose this type of lifestyle that is not the norm in society, and we all view each other equally in this world. And it really seems more like that in the lifestyle world than it ever did in church to me.
Yes. Yeah, I'm sure Ginger would say the exact same thing.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Liam, do you have any other misconceptions?
Well, I was just thinking back to, the different things that we heard when people were tweeting in, and the word that kept coming up the most was fear. So the fears might be different, but that word fear was really governing a lot of people's behavior and their lives, and we're all aware of it. We could be holding back at work because of fear. We don't want to put our ideas forward because we're afraid we'll be shot down, or we might be afraid of different social situations, but it becomes a big factor for the lifestyle, for being in consensual non-monogamy. And it underscores to me the way we're all kind of ambassadors, that, most of us are not, we don't have a sign on our front lawn saying consensual non-monogamous inside. And we may not be telling a lot of people, but most of us are telling someone, and by extension, we become ambassadors. I realize when I'm saying this, it's what I used to think of in my church life. We're all ambassadors for Christ. And, every minute we're representing him. And what kind of message are you giving? And I think that's an exciting thing for us who have chosen non-monogamy, that we are ambassadors for that world. And we have a chance to make a difference, to just maybe even not let a joke slide by that's disrespectful or that is sex negative. And, everyone assumes, oh, it's safe to say, to engage in slut shaming, that thing that happens so much in our society. And, it's in movies and it's in TV shows. And we just have a chance to be difference makers in that regard.
Yeah, there's every once in a while you'll see a swinging party or something as a bit in a movie or a TV show, and it's always infuriating when you see it, because they do a terrible job of accurately representing what actually happens.
Right.
And you're in this position as somebody who embraces the lifestyle. You don't want to tell people that you do it because you're hiding it, or most of us are. But you also want to defend it, and you can't. Right. A lot of times, because by defending it, then you open yourself up to, accusation and judgment. So there is this inside of me, this desire to help normalize this viewpoint of sexuality. And, in some sense, I'm thankful that we got outed a while back, but we still don't want to be forward about it because it makes people uncomfortable. So we've been outed, and we would like to defend it, but you still can't just walk around talking about it. In much the same way I was always uncomfortable talking about Christianity. I was a Christian. People knew I was a Christian, but it felt a little weird just bringing it up all the time.
Right. And now we have something that we really believe in. Like, I'd be surprised if there's anyone on this call who doesn't think, if they've participated at all, that it's the most amazing thing. So even like Consensual Tim, who has walked away from the poly world, or has taken a pause from that because of where he is in his life and his relationship, but having a positive view of it, and the role it played for him learning to communicate and be more honest with partners. We all believe it's a great thing, and we can all do little parts here and there, just at the local and the level of our spheres of influence, to make a difference. Because, we started out, this episode is called Myths About Consensual Non-Monogamy. And the idea is we want to break down those myths, and we're doing that today by assembling here in a Twitter space, but we have a chance to do it just in our everyday conversation as well.
Yeah. Well, great. So we've been on about an hour now. I guess we should wrap it up. Anything you want to say about the course you guys are creating, or anything that's coming up with Monogamish Marriage?
Yeah, thanks. We've put together this course kind of aligned with our mission, which is to say that not everyone should be non-monogamous, but everyone should consider it. And you can't consider it if you don't have good information. So we are working on that. We were filming yesterday, and we're going to be doing that through the month of February. If someone was to go to themonogamishmarriage.com, all one word, kind of the worst URL in history in terms of economy and and easy to remember, not like Naughty Jim, which is just rolls off the tongue. But we're themonogamishmarriage.com, and everything that we do, from that course to the podcast to the blog, is on there. And there's an email address there, and we just love to talk to people individually about their journeys as well.
Well, I think that's going to be a fantastic product. It'll be an easy way for, if somebody actually asks you, advice about the lifestyle, it'd be an easy way to just refer someone. You know what? I can tell you my experience, but here is a great resource that you can look into that's going to really help guide you down that path. So I can't wait to see what you guys put out. We we are going to see you guys two different trips. One, in the first trip that we've put together, our Naughty Gym adventure in Montana in Glacier National Park. There's 15 couples. You guys are one of them that'll be there with us. And this fantastic trip that we put together, and we sold it out in about 5 days, which blew our mind. We couldn't believe the reception that thing got. And because of that, we've been working on some other trips down the road as well. So I hope everybody will keep an eye out for that. And we will see you guys also in Antigua at Room 77's incredibly beautiful resort takeover there that we both went to last year. And if anybody needs a trip and wants to take one with an incredibly sexy group of people, that trip to Antigua is something you should look at. It's Room 77 Events, I think, is you could Google that and search for the trip. But
Yeah.
we'll see you guys there as well.
Yeah. Well, I like to say anyone who's considering a trip to Desire or Hedonism or Caliente, you're going to be there with just whoever happened to pay the money and sign up for that week. But at that event in Antigua put on by Room 77, it's a really, it seemed, I don't think they do this, but it's like a hand-picked group of really smart, sensitive, compassionate, fit, just wonderful, wonderfully interesting, sexually positive people. So yeah, I would just double what you said there. That it's just a great event. And I'm going to throw in a little note about something else too. We're also speaking at Podcastapalooza in Palm Springs in June. Yep. And so if you looked up podcast-a-palooza, or get close to the spelling, I'm sure Google will help you out. It is it's a shorter event, so it's a weekend, and it is like we've been at the previous 3 incarnations of it. And again, an amazingly sensitive, wonderful group of sex-positive human beings getting together for 3 days of seminars and parties and everything else you would want with that kind of group.
And anybody that's listening that has any of these trips coming up, a big vacation, or just needs help with their fitness and nutrition, that's what we do. We live that life every day. Go to naughtygym.com. Our memberships are $19 a month, and there's no commitment, no contracts. It's a phenomenal community of people that will help encourage you and help you get your workouts done and all that kind of stuff. So I always encourage people to try us for a month. If you don't think it's for you, then go back to Planet Fitness or something. But we're there and we're available to help. All right, Don, I appreciate it. And
yeah, that's okay.
Liam, I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
All right. Bye, everyone.